Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to focus on a short story that captured my interest recently, for better or for worse, and it is also a Christmas-themed short story since we are in the month of December. It is a short story about, of course, Christmas and pilgrims. I am referring to The First Christmas of New England by Harriet Beecher Stowe, which was published in 1875. For those who don't know, and I have a feeling anyone who studied American history might know her, Harriet Beecher Stowe, she was an American author and also an abolitionist for slavery, and she is mostly known for writing Uncle Tom's Cabin, a seminal work of anti-slavery literature in the 1800s, which I haven't read. I tried to read when I was in high school, but I didn't quite understand it. I think I should give it another chance, but after reading this short story, I'm hesitant to read any more Stowe works just because she comes off as very preachy in her work, and that's largely because she was a religious woman who believed that everyone was equal under God, and which contributes a lot to her anti-slavery rhetoric and beliefs that she had. And Uncle Tom's Cabin wasn't the only work of slavery or anti-slavery literature that she wrote. She wrote a lot of it. Unfortunately, as she got older, she had what a lot of scientists now are calling Alzheimer's disease, and she ended up dying as a result of that. One sad thing that's been noted is that as she grew older, she tried to rewrite Uncle Tom's Cabin, believing that she hadn't written it yet, largely due to the Alzheimer's, which is very unfortunate. If you know of someone who suffered from it, or if you're just aware of it at all, you know that it's not easy to deal with for both the people who have it and for those who are family and friends of those individuals. So just talking about it more is very important. And so without further ado, let's talk about The First Christmas of New England. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So The First Christmas of New England is told from the third person perspective about the first pilgrims who landed at Plymouth Rock in 1620. The narrator talks about Cape Cod first, noting how a lot of the Atlantic shore of America is hostile and hard to land on, but Cape Cod is gentle and very easy for boats to get access to. So it made for a perfect location for someone to land. There's also, you see the pilgrims arriving and praising God from the narrator, and also the pilgrims who are, as they say, they're trying to escape persecution in England. They eventually decide to go ashore for brief periods of time to explore, to bathe, and to begin building the town that they're going to live in, because they can't live in their boats forever. You see them with their plans to build, and they show even further gratitude towards God and Jesus and in various aspects of the Bible. You see a lot of psalms in this story. Unfortunately, the first winter at Plymouth Colony is not easy, and people begin to die, which is very hard for the colony, especially because they can't stop and mourn that person, because if they don't continue to build and seek out shelter and warmth, they themselves will die. So they constantly have to reflect and focus on God in order to remember why they are at Plymouth in the first place. And they find reassurance in God at that point. So it definitely helps them. They celebrate Jesus as Christmas comes closer and closer. We don't really see, the narrator notes, we don't really see like from the journals or the writings of the time, what happened to a lot of the people who were on the Mayflower, especially as it pertains to Christmas. But we do know that they did celebrate it, and they were also slightly afraid of the Indians who lived nearby because they didn't know what to expect from them. And then as the story comes to a close, the narrator notes that the Puritans are actually the focus of what's going on in King James Court at the time back in England, with the narrator noting that it provides merriment. So either the King James is marveling at what the Puritans are doing, or him and his followers are making fun of the Puritans for their struggles. It's not really clear what's going on there as the story comes to an end. In terms of analysis, there is a little bit to talk about here. This is a very long story, but there's not a lot of substance to it. It's one of the more longer short stories that I've read, medium length or something like that. But one of the ideas that Stowe is talking about here, like beating you over the head with it. There's a lesson to be learned from subtlety sometimes. but she's talking about religion. She notes that Puritans are finding comfort in the Bible's teachings. It goes back to who they are. They're more like outspoken religious advocates, and if you know anything about history, you know that they didn't have any comfort in England, mainly because the church was doing other things at the time, the Church of England. And so they, maybe because they were so extreme in their views, they decided to go to the Netherlands and see if they could thrive there. But for one reason or another, they couldn't, and so they came back to England, and then they finally decided, let's go across the Atlantic. We've been hearing so much about this new land. Maybe we can find a place there where we'll be allowed to believe what it is that we believe. And unfortunately, that is what happened, and that is the story of America. But they found solace in this difficult time in God. Like their struggles make them closer to God, because they believe that to struggle is to persist, is to be closer to God. And much like with the story of Jesus, how he went through a lot of struggles and was nailed to a cross. This might be their own opportunity for redemption here and finding this new land. If only they're able to make it through this rough first winter, these rough couple winters that they're going to find now that they're in this new land. Stowe uses Bible verses here and Psalms to get her point across. It's not very subtle here, as I mentioned before, and it's one of the weaker points of the story, because I'm not being led to this point naturally. She's just throwing it all there and saying, Christmas is Jesus and God. Christmas is all about that. And the Puritans were all about Jesus and God, and blah, 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 blah. And it's not very subtle. And it's like, I get it, Harriet. I know exactly what you're trying to say. But one more unfortunate thing about this is how the natives apparently don't fit into this grand biblical sort of narrative, because she doesn't really mention the natives, and then when the one time that she does, she notes that the characters grab their musket when they hear the natives. But why would they need to do that? Unless the natives were already dangerous, or if they had heard stories. But they're the first sort of people to arrive there, at least from England. So why are they inherently scared of the natives? And more so, why if these people are God's people, why don't the natives fit in this narrative of God's people? Do they not deserve the love of being a human, much in the same way that everyone else does? And I don't think that Stowe really considers that, and it might even be the case that Stowe is anti-native in general, or believes that natives should assimilate, or believes that they're savages. I'm not really clear on what she exactly believes, but to have a story be like God's people are great, and then also fuck these natives that also exist, it comes off as a little bit kind of hypocritical. And much like with Washington Irving, Stowe is basically mythologizing history here. She's writing about the Puritans who arrived on the Mayflower, and she's kind of hyping up America, creating it as a promised land in this story where the Puritans can hopefully go and feel welcome, whereas in England they weren't. Also kind of demonizing England in the same process. Just noting how England was, there wasn't space anymore for them. It was a horrible place, kind of poor and downtrodden, and this land is lush, providing for everyone, at least right now, and very beautiful and scenic. Also kind of highlighting how the Pilgrims, the Puritans, might have been God's chosen people, because they are coming across the ocean to this new land, and this land is, again, it's been provided for by God, by nature, and surely these people who are here are to be God's chosen people to create a new world, although they might have to struggle, but they are going to create a new world, a new country that shall be one of the best countries in the world, even if it does have a few struggles here and there. So kind of upping America as this magical, wondrous land that wasn't always so fruitful, but it eventually got to that point. Now, this is very fine, like a fine way to describe America, but kind of like with what Washington Irving does, it ignores the dirty facts of the story. I don't think Stowe ever mentions the slaves that come over on the Mayflower, even though she was an abolitionist. She's like, slavery is bad, but she doesn't even mention the slaves here, kind of omitting them from the historical narrative that exists at this time. And then also ignoring the natives in the story, and how in the traditional view of the first Thanksgiving, of the first winter, for the natives, like they relied on the natives to provide them with food and the resources they needed to survive. And which is true? Is it the case that didn't actually happen, or did that actually happen and Stowe's just ignoring it here to beautify her story? Kind of highlighting how maybe both of those are just myths that we created in order to justify what came after, perhaps, or something like that. But my point is, this just ignores the dirty facts, and it's more of a whitewashing of history made to sanitize and clean it up so that you can say that America is great without having to acknowledge all the bad stuff that happened afterwards. Maybe Stowe isn't trying to go as far, but this is what you end up with, like a century later, almost 150 years later, because if you just try to sanitize the United States, like its history, you're ignoring the actual facts. And I would even argue that if you can't praise America without hiding the dirty stuff that it did, then America isn't great. And the only way to truly portray it as great is to work to make it a great place where everyone thrives and everyone is able to get what they need to survive, and we aren't committing genocide against a whole group of people. Again, none of that is Stowe's fault, but it does come off as a bit like a bit cynical, or not even cynical, like just trying to hide the dirty stuff in order to only focus on the juicy God stuff that Stowe wants to talk about here. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the first Christmas of New England. Needless to say, I did not enjoy this. I thought it was going to be much better than it was, given that Stowe was an abolitionist. I thought she would at least mention something about slavery or race relationships or something like that, especially given that she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. But I guess that was Beecher Stowe prior to 1865, and maybe by 1875 she considered that part of her life done and over with. I'm not 100% sure. Something worth considering as you are reading this. If you read it before, or you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so below. I don't encourage you to go out and read this on your own. There are probably better Harriet Beecher Stowe stories out there, although I am not encouraged to find more of them from her in the near future. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about this author if they don't already know, or this short story if they're interested in reading it, I guess. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and pilgrim travels. Farewell.